So I often get asked, what are things to look for when choosing your wedding venue? This is a talk that I've done at the National Wedding Show a couple of times, and I'm just going to run through it right now and share with you the top things I think are really, really important to think about when choosing your wedding venue. My darling, I love you, 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 I love you. So the first thing to do when choosing your wedding venue is to work out your budget. I think that it's really important to have a little think about the numbers and how many people you're going to have coming to your wedding, and then what kind of budget that will allow for. Then what you want to do is you want to go onto, either the internet or something like Hitched, etc., and find local venues that are in your area, and then have a look at sort of what budgets they are and if they interest you at all. Now, you can look at lots of different things. You have barn weddings, you have country house venue weddings, you've got hotel weddings, you've got historical houses where you can get married at the local registry office, you could go to a pub for your reception, you could have a marquee in your garden should you have the space to allow for that. And town halls as well are also really great places. Sometimes you can get married on site and then you can have your reception there as well. Every single one of those does things completely differently. There's two things you need to think about. The first one would be dry hire. And that basically is when you go to a venue and they literally give you the keys and they say to you, you can have this country house or barn or whatever it is from this time till this time. And you need to bring the alcohol, the catering, the tables, the chairs, the cutlery, the crockery, which sometimes is included, sometimes not. And then you would need to do the decorations yourselves, etc. And for some people that works really well. Then on the flip side, you have more of the sort of all-inclusive style venue where they basically offer to do the catering, they provide all the cutlery, crockery, etc. You would have to provide the decoration, but often in those circumstances, they have someone that they recommend and they say, oh, this company can come in and do your decoration for you, and you would then hire them to come and do that. So those are the two kind of styles that you have. What you also need to think about is if you're having something like a marquee wedding, is what are the hidden costs that you're not thinking about? For example, you may need to get portaloos, you may need to hire in the furniture, you're going to need heat lamp things for like outside when people are trying to keep warm at night. They may come with the marquee, they might not come with the marquee. There is an epic video, it's amazing, of a wedding that had a marquee and didn't get a floor in the marquee, and it torrential rained, and basically it's the groomsmen and the bridesmaids sort of like mud surfing across the floor of the marquee. Now, that makes for quite a fun video if you've got a really great sense of humor, but I don't have that kind of sense of humor, and if that was my wedding, I'd probably be mortified and devastated. So think about what kind of ground you're putting your marquee onto and what's around it, and are you going to have massive water mudslide coming into your marquee, in which case you definitely need a floor. With regards to the country houses and the hotels, obviously they would have most of the time accommodation on site, which is something you need to think about. Do they have enough accommodation for your guests? Is there accommodation in the local area? Are you in the middle of nowhere? Do they have Wi-Fi and do they have phone reception? It's really common to find these country houses, and some hotels and also some of the barns have absolutely no phone reception. So you want to then make sure that they have good Wi-Fi in case you're having family come that have children that need to be contactable by babysitters, etc. And then just also for silly things at the end of the night, like phoning taxis. It's very good to do that research and find out, if your guests are coming and they are going to need pre-ordered taxis, you want to put that information into the invitations. With regards to the actual ceremony itself, you need to look at, are you going to have a church ceremony, or are you going to have the registrars come to the venue, or are you going to go to the registry office before you go to the venue? It kind of depends on the style of wedding that you're having as to which of those options works for you. There isn't a right or wrong. They're all great options. But you just need to then have a look at, if you are having a church wedding, it can be quite a long wedding. And then you don't want your venue to be over an hour away. So you don't want people to have to then travel, ideally not longer than about 20 minutes. to get to your venue. So if you're going for a church wedding, that's probably the first thing to decide. What church are you looking at? And then you can see which venues are around that church. With regards to the venues themselves, you need to make sure that you sort of have a look, pick like maybe your top 20 venues, email them all, or, you know, click the download the brochure button and get all the pricing and information. Then go through all of that. Some people make a spreadsheet, some people just read it. Depends on the type of person you are. I kind of potlucked, looked at the pictures, looked at the rough pricing and was like, oh, that kind of works. And then, you know, take that information and pick maybe like your top 3 to 5. And those are the venues you want to go and see. Some people go and see 10 venues, some people only go and see 2. Like, again, there's no right or wrong, but you need to get that sort of scaled down to what your favorite venues are. When you go to the venues, take a list of questions. Like, there's nothing wrong with asking questions, and you should be able to ask all the questions that you want. And for me, that's also an indication of the person that is sort of selling the venue to you. You want to know that person's interested in your wedding. You want to know they're passionate about weddings. You want to know that they'll look after your wedding. I've heard a number of people that have been to like their favorite venue and they didn't book it because the person selling them the wedding just didn't seem that interested and they didn't feel a connection with them, and therefore they were worried that that person wouldn't actually properly look after their wedding. And I think that's actually a very good indicator. So you want to have your list of questions. You want to ask them, you know, what time are your decorators allowed to come in? What time do you have to have all the decoration cleared and taken out? Does the venue help you with that? Or do you have to, you and your family have to do it? Or do you have to get the venue decorators back in to take everything out? A lot of venues have weddings the next day. So you need to know, how are you getting your stuff out? And also, how are you bringing your stuff in that morning? What are their requirements? You need to find out what their no list is. A lot of venues will have things that are a no on their list, such as fireworks, which can be a deal breaker for some people. Bouncy castles can also be on a no list, particularly in a venue which is in a valley, which, you know, has a big wind tunnel, then they're just not safe. Lawn games can also be a no, depending on what, you know, how the venue is. Do they have neighbours? Is the neighbours a problem? Is there a certain time where the outdoor patio has to be closed and all your guests have to come inside? Where's the smoking area? These are a lot of the things to look at outside, like also where are the photo spots? Like, what are their key photo spots that you'll be going to with your photographer? With regards to the inside, for me, one of the most important things, if you want a party and you want a really big party, is the bar in the same room as the dancing. And that can be a game changer for your wedding. If the bar is in a different room to where everybody's dancing, it's very possible you will just never get that dancing atmosphere. It's also good to check, is there a side room? So, for example, if you have, you know, relatives or guests that don't want to be in all the dancing and loud music, is there somewhere where they can go for a cup of tea or a gin and tonic or whatever? You know, and also if you have any sort of, you know, nursing mums or anyone that has small children, is there somewhere where they can then go and have like a little bit of a sit down and private moment? Creaky door. What you also would need to look for me, which is super important, particularly I find this mainly in barn venues and also sometimes hotel venues, is, are you going to be stuck in one room all day? Like, is the ceremony in one room, at which point it then gets flipped to being the reception room to then, you know, the dancing area? And it's kind of fine if you then can move out to a bar or move out to outside and come back in. Like, that's not the end of the world. But if there isn't another indoor space to go, and if it rains all day, then really that can be a problem, because your guests will end up very sort of stuck in one place. Creaky door. So it's really important to find out, like, how many actual function rooms are you allowed to use for your wedding, and where do the guests go in terms of inside or outside. I would also ask, like, how many rooms they have licensed. So what rooms are available for you to go and have a look at, you know, that have a license where you can get married. So, for example, in one of the venues, the Ravenswood, they have an indoor license in the Baronial Hall, which is the old hall. They also have one in the Jacobean, which is like a nice, light, airy space. If you're having a lot of guests, you could get married in the Beatrice. If you wanted an outside wedding, you could get married outside at the Little Castle. So they have the rain option as well. It's not like you can just get married outside and then if it suddenly rains, it's like, oh, well, everybody's putting umbrellas up. Or that suddenly you're then pulled into a room inside that's not really set up properly for a ceremony. So you need to have a look, like, what are the different ceremony options, weather permitting, and how do you make those rooms look nice and cozy if you are at a very last minute flipping from outside to inside. It's also really good to ask them, what is their time limit on flipping from outside to inside? Some venues make you decide the day before. If the weather doesn't look good, they won't let you get married outside. Other venues are quite happy to sort of throw it all together at the last 10 minutes. It just depends how many staff they have on site. You can also make agreements saying, well, if we are going to throw it together at the last 10 minutes, then, maybe we'll have the groomsmen help you put the chairs out, etc., which might sway the venue to wait that little bit longer to see if you can have that outdoor wedding that you've hoped to have, or if you need to go inside. Obviously, catering is a big deal, and you need to really make sure that if the venue is providing catering, then you want to see examples of the menus. You want to ask the venue, like, how do they deal with catering, like for vegans or for people with allergies, etc. And that should just be a very smooth answer. They should deal with it all the time very well. But find out if there's any sort of hidden costs and things like that. If you're hiring outdoor catering, then it's quite good to find out if the venue has people recommended, that you can then contact them and get quotes for that, etc. I think the biggest thing is just looking for hidden costs. I've heard of venues that basically would charge you like £250 to light the fire if you wanted the fire lit. I mean, I know it's a bit of an effort to light a fire, but it's not £250 worth of an effort. You also want to make sure that, in the basic package, you're not then suddenly in a situation where 3 months before the wedding, you realize that actually you don't have canapes in it, or the canapes you have aren't enough for the guests, and then they're trying to upsell you to get 4 more canapes, extra drinks, extra wine on the table, etc. So you want to make sure at the time that there is enough wine, there is enough Prosecco, and there are enough canapes for the guests that you're having, as opposed to then suddenly find out like 3 months before the wedding that you need to spend another £5,000 topping all of these things up. Now, obviously, if you go for a basic package and you have in mind that if you do have spare cash later, you'll increase the wine package or that's totally okay. That's not the same thing. It's just making sure that everything is included that you need for the day. That normally includes a reception drink, canapes, 3-course meal, toasting drink, wine on the table, evening buffet. I think that's it. Yeah, that pretty much covers it. Entertainment. The other thing you need to think about when booking a venue is entertainment. For example, do they have a decibel reader? In which case, what is the level on that decibel reader? And that's basically a machine in the venue that says when things are too loud, and sometimes that will cut the power off. So if you're planning on having like a huge rock band, they will definitely go over a decibel reader. Also, what you want to look for is, do they have a recommended DJ? Can you bring your own DJ in? Are you stuck only using their suppliers, or can you bring your suppliers in? Some venues won't let you bring your own suppliers in. You have to use their suppliers. And sometimes people don't find that out until after they've booked the venue, and that can create massive upsets. In terms of entertainment, like, are you allowed to have entertainment outside? While your guests are having their drinks reception, are you allowed to have someone singing outside or playing guitar? Some venues can't have that because of their neighbors. So it's just checking what that sort of situation is. Also, what you want to know is what time carriages come. So carriages is an old-fashioned thing that's used in the wedding industry. It literally means when the horse and carriage will arrive to take your guests home. So they often say, carriages are booked for midnight, which means your wedding is finishing at midnight. So again, you need to check that, because some venues have licenses that only go till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. Some go to midnight. Sometimes you can ask for an extension. Are they able to do it till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning? Just check with your venue and see what it is they allow. Squeaky door. I think that pretty much covers everything. Obviously, there may be more things, but it covers the general gist. You can always ping me a message if you have any other questions. You can always find me on Instagram at The Wedding Planning Hub. And obviously, give this channel a follow if you like what you see. I will have lots more videos coming, and check out some of the ones that are already there. Cheesy smile at the end.